I'm Linda Hirsch, and this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education. Educators have long stressed the importance of exposing children to books, even as young as infancy. What do children see and hear when we read to them, or when they read on their own? A book can mirror a child's reality, providing characters and stories they can identify with. But what happens when children don't see themselves reflected in the books they read? What kinds of messages are they receiving? Today, EdCast examines the state of representation in books today and why one organization, LINC, is working to increase diversity through literacy. I'll also speak with an award-winning author of children's books and streaming content about creating works for bilingual children and the power of books to embrace unique perspectives and share different cultures. Coming up now on EdCast. My guests today are Laura Walsh and Susie Jaramillo. Laura Walsh is the Chief Programs Officer at LINC. She is an experienced manager of educational programming, specializing in early literacy, nonprofit management, and staff development. As a literacy specialist, she is intimately aware of the literacy crisis plaguing New York City. She has worked as a program manager for the Literacy Trust, training over 150 public schools in New York City on a reading intervention program called Reading Rescue. Laura was the senior manager of elementary programs at DREAM and became the founding Dean of Culture at Dreams Elementary School in the Bronx. Laura's work reflects her commitment to foster literacy through quality programming that can serve as a pathway to equity. Susie Jaramillo is an acclaimed Latina artist and storyteller. She is the creator of the Emmy-nominated and two-time Kids Screen Award-winning bilingual preschool brand Canticos. Her latest Canticos books are Amor is to Love You and I Love My Mommy, Te Quiero Mama. Her series, Skeletina and the In-Between World, debuted in 2022. Susie is a Publishers Weekly Rising Star finalist and Mills Tannenbaum Award recipient for children's literacy, as well as the International Latino Book Awards. The creative head of Encantos, Susie creates diverse characters brought to life in books, toys, on screen, and wherever else children like to spend their time. Thank you both for joining us today on EdCast to talk about these very important topics about diversity and literacy. I want to begin with you, Laura. Just tell us a little bit about LINC. What is it and what is its mission?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me today.
Welcome.
So, as you mentioned, I'm LINC's Chief Program Officer, and LINC is a nonprofit organization which stands for Literacy in Community. And at LINC, we are fearlessly passionate about ending the literacy crisis. And the way that we do that is by deeply rooting ourselves into each community and harnessing the power of our community partners, our schools, our daycares, our barbershops, and our parents. And what we do is we invest in our community partners and our parents by providing community programs and author events like the one that we'll speak about today, and parent workshops to equip parents with skills that they can use every day in their homes to raise readers.
And we're going to talk about some of those things that parents can do to both of you as this conversation goes on. I want to ask you each then, first of all, how bad is the literacy crisis? Let me just go to you for a moment on that.
Well, so I've spent my entire career working on the intervention side of this literacy crisis. And so what that means is I've traditionally spent my time meeting children when they're already grade levels behind in reading. And the crisis for a while, was very invisible across New York City, but across the nation. And so right now, it is extremely urgent that we all address this problem. The literacy crisis is everywhere. It's plaguing New York City, as I mentioned, and the nation, but it's really coming to light right now with the reading wars. And so I'm so thrilled that LINC takes a preventative approach to this crisis, and we invest in our community partners and parents so that we can prevent a child from entering school already behind. And that's the bulk of the work that we do, that we prepare kids to enter kindergarten ready to read.
And why is early literacy so important?
Early literacy is so important is because reading isn't just checking a box on a report card. It's not just a subject in school, but literacy is access. Literacy is equity. Literacy opens doors to a successful life and beyond. And so I think that it's such a critically important topic.
Okay. Now, one of the things we're really going to be focusing on today is diversity in literacy. And I want to ask you each, and Susie, you're an author and creator of so much literature for children. I'm asking, why is it so important that we have diverse voices and diverse presentations on what we present to children?
That's such a good question. I see it from two angles. On the one hand, you want kids to feel seen, right? You want them to see themselves and see their culture reflected in the literature that they read. And on the other hand, you want kids that are not from that culture to feel closer to that culture, right? But by singing the songs from that culture and by reading about, stories from that culture. And so I feel like it serves a purpose of bridging and really bringing communities together. And we certainly think about that, especially with Canticos and Tiny Travelers. Our Tiny Travelers collection was really designed to introduce kids to the countries and the cultures of the world, to make children from immigrant communities feel seen, but also to introduce all of these beautiful countries to kids that might not know about them, right? And the same with Canticos. For Latinos, this is our culture, it's bringing it back to us, but for those who aren't Latino, it's a whole new beautiful world of nursery rhymes.
Okay, so they see other
Absolutely.
exposure. Now, and what would you say? Why is it so important?
So it's so critically important because this early childhood age is really when we start to form our understandings of self and the world. And so LINC, when we do our author events or when we do our programs, we really see stories as an opportunity to be windows and mirrors for our children, how they develop their understanding of the world around them. And so to bring these stories to life and have children have the opportunity to see themselves, but also be exposed to other cultures, traditions, etc., is so impactful, particularly in the early childhood age.
Now tell us a little bit about the Diversity Through Literacy campaign that you just finished.
Yeah, so LINC was very excited to finish our 4th annual Diversity Through Literacy event. We did it through the power of community partners. So we were able to do this through a partnership with Fidelis Care, with our Lee and Low Publishing, with Canticos, and also with Penguin. And so it's a beautiful event where we bring community partners together and diverse authors to celebrate diverse stories for children. And we did it in all 5 boroughs. So LINC is across New York City in all 5 boroughs. And so this event brought to life our passion to bring authentic literature into the homes of our families.
Now, I think, Susie, you had mentioned that the way we consume media is different nowadays. How is that different and why is it important?
So we live in a world where kids have a lot of options in terms of how they want to consume media, and they get it in book form, but they're all going to have their phones, right? They're going to have access to screens. And so I think that as storytellers, we take all of those different ways kids can consume media into consideration, right? And you want to make sure also that you take advantage of the learning opportunities that the different formats present. So for example, while we make books, and this is an example of our reversible English on one side, Spanish on the other book, but then for the app, it will read it to you. So if a child is a pre-reader, they can actually hear the words being read to them, and they can see the words light up as they're being read. And that opportunity you can't do on a physical book. So we see every different sort of format as another learning opportunity and a way to deepen the child's learning.
Would you say, compared to, I don't know, a decade ago, is there more representation of minority children in books today? And are there more opportunities for minority authors today?
I'll answer this one. So I'm going to say barely.
Barely? Really?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
There's more.
Disappointing.
There's absolutely more, but we haven't really made that much progress. I mean, you've got 30% of babies are Latino, and it's 5% of books. Right? That's kind of dismal representation. It really, really is. And so I think, and from the African American side, it's a little bit better. It's 11% of the population and 14% of the population and 11% of books. So I'm going to say that it's gotten better, but it needs to get so much better. Right? And a lot of this has to do with gatekeepers, and I'm not talking about necessarily gatekeepers within the publishing house. It's also gatekeepers within the buyer side of things. Right? And gatekeepers in terms of what books they choose to display and what books they choose to promote. And so The more folks inside the business of books that look at it and think, I'm going to make the conscious effort to put this forward and make sure that this community feels seen, the more we'll be able to move the needle on that front.
But you don't think it's moved that much?
I really don't think it's moved that much. Maybe it went from 3% to 5%, but it's really...
Decades ago, we worked on gender. There were no girls in books. I mean, it's really always something about representation in children's literature, and you've already described why it's so important to have that representation. How many children's books are currently in Spanish? Do we have any idea in terms of books that are available for children?
I don't know. I don't have that answer,
Let's go to you for a moment, Susie, because you are an illustrator and author of bilingual content, including storybooks and sing-alongs and all kinds of multimedia. And can you tell us what Encantos is and what Canticos is?
Sure. So Encantos is my company, and Encantos is we're dedicated to producing stories with purpose, inspired by a world of culture. Why? We think culture is one of the most richest and beautiful things you can bring forth, and we don't see enough of culture in books currently in the market. And we think that books are kind of the foundation in many ways of culture, right? Culture gets shaped by literature, which translates into media, right? Translates into the movies that we see, the cartoons that we watch, right? And so that directly impacts our culture and the way we see ourselves and the way others see us. And so creating media, and we do see it as media, that's impactful and that's purposeful and that gives children something is at the heart of the mission of Encantos. And so our first bilingual baby brand is called Canticos. And Canticos, the mission of Canticos is really to help parents translate and sort of communicate both their culture and their language to their children in a fun way, because there's so many Latino parents. I don't know if you know this, but 45% of Gen Z moms, which is moms kind of like between 20s and 30s, are Latino, right? And again, when we talked about this 5% representation on the literature front, and so they care passionately about, like, we love our culture and we want to have different ways to pass it on to our kids. And so providing these moms with tools that were fun and that were joyful and that communicated the most wonderful aspects of our culture, so that the children could be raised with pride and would want to identify as Latino and would want to feel like they belong here in the United States, that this is their home, and that, again, to your point, belonging, it's such an important thing to cultivating kids. And so that is kind of the mission of Canticos.
Now, is your target audience, I'm thinking now, listening to you, that your target audience is primarily Spanish-dominant families. How many monolingual English speakers do you think pick up on the books as well?
The funny thing about that is actually our target audience is not Spanish-dominant.
It is not?
It is
okay.
not, yeah.
See? What is it?
So our target audience, I would say our super fans are English-dominant Latino moms.
English-dominant Latino, very interesting.
That's
okay.
right. English-dominant Latino moms and parents that value bilingualism as a whole.
Okay.
That see bilingualism as a superpower, as something that prevents dementia, increases brain flexibility, and there's all kinds of neurological studies that have shown that, like, bilingualism is good for the brain.
Okay. Yeah. So let's just take, let me just ask you, Laura, just to go quickly. At what age do you think children should be read to? How early do we start?
Right away.
When you say right away.
Like in the womb.
In the womb.
In the womb, yep. And
okay.
so we start our programs for parents prenatal. So we partner with hospital networks, and so we talk about reading to your baby in the womb, then continuing to read to them from the moment they're born. And reading books like yours can be so impactful, because we want to raise children and parents to understand that bilingualism really is a superpower.
It is.
And as you were saying it, I'm thinking about all the families that we serve, and the ability to hear their language and see it in story paired with English and seeing it as this beautiful tool that they can have in their homes really does have such a change on the home front and on the academic side of things.
And you can sing to them in the womb too, which is the beauty of these songs. These
take
books,
a look for a minute at Canticos. Now, Canticos, you said, is for the really little ones. So how little are we looking at?
So it's 0 to 4.
Okay.
By the time they're 4, this will be the first book that they could read all by themselves. Okay. But when they're really little, they're just going to enjoy the music and the concepts and the characters.
So let's take a look at Canticos. We have a clip of learning the alphabet from a Canticos video. So let's take a look and see what that looks like.
Do you know what letters are? Letras, like ABC, ABC. Letters are magical because they make up the words we use. Nuestras palabras. It's like a code we send messages with. Let's get to know all of our letters. ¿Listos? Ready?
So this is the very, very first book in what we're calling our Canticos Bilingual Firsts. Now we're very excited about this collection of books because this will help you teach really basic preschool concepts to little children. So the great thing about the way you read this book is you can also emphasize phonics. So when you read it to your child, you can say, A is for apple. A de árbol.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P.
¿Otra vez?
En español. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, N, O, P.
What prompted your desire to create these works?
I mean, we really wanted to have something beautiful that would not only celebrate Latin culture for those that were Latin, for those that weren't Latin, but also help kids become kindergarten ready in 2 languages, right? So teach 21st century skills. So not only will they learn their basic literacy skill, their basic numeracy skills, they'll learn concepts like how to recognize emotions in other people, right? How to acknowledge when you did something wrong and say, I'm sorry, right? How to value gratitude, right? Or love. So all of these wonderful concepts, as well as recognize your shapes, know your numbers, know your letters, your days of the week. And so all of this sort of pedagogical thinking went into the development of Canticos. So absolutely, it's reading and it's phonics and it's music in a cultural context, but it's also basic preschool skills.
And I also see that it's basically preschool fun. And I want to ask you both, to entice children into becoming readers, what do you think are the essential components of the literature that we present to them?
Yeah, so I think step 1 starts with that enticing piece, that you have to build in the joy of reading and a love of reading, and that starts with parents reading from the womb, day 1. And so it's about first seeing the joy and the power in literature and being able to connect with story, and then you can start to build on those other early literacy skills that are essential for entering kindergarten.
So you are both advocates of obviously involving parents. So I want to ask each of you, what are some of the ways that through literacy in community, what are some of the strategies that you share with parents? I've seen in your videos that you really address parents or caregivers frequently in the video. What are some strategies that our viewers should keep in mind when they want to introduce books and other media to their children?
Well, number 1 is keep books on hand all the time. And at LINC, we provide programs and events, but we also provide book access through wonderful partnerships like this one. And so I think keeping a literacy-rich home is critical, and so that is through story, but also through ways as simple as labeling things in your home. And if you are a bilingual household, you can label things in your home like table, chair, in multiple languages, so that children can start to see not just letter recognition, but word recognition and the difference in the words and the languages. What we love at LINC is to give parents tools that they can incorporate into their already existing daily routine. So games that you can play during bath time, games that you can play during the commute, rhyming songs, and little challenges that they can play with each other in a way that we think is critical. Is if you incorporate the parent and the child, it builds that connection together, also makes it really motivating for both people to play along.
And what would you say, Susie, do you feel is important for parents to keep in mind?
Great question. I think that joy is really at the heart and center of it all. The parents need to be having fun. The kids need to be having fun. Part of what Canticos does is it makes it musical, and so you can actually, memorize the songs, and then all of a sudden you're singing the song for grandma, and then there's pride there. There's confidence building there, right? And also everything is done twice. So in English and then otra vez en español, right? And so you're building on that play pattern of repetition that children love, and you're learning a second language with the repetition. So, and we also make our books really interactive. There's lift the flaps, there's, do the voices, you know what I mean? Have fun when you read to the kids. I think that's a super important part of it.
As we're speaking about books in English and Spanish, and you mentioned the paucity of books available in Spanish, I'm thinking of other cultures and how underrepresented they must be. Do we know anything about books that might be available to other, cultures that are out, or is it really just something that the publishing profession really has to work on?
So,
are there bilingual books in other languages for other children?
We do know, so it depends country to country how strong their publishing industries are internally. So China, for example, has a very strong publishing industry. And so you'll see that there are probably more books in Chinese. And also you'll see that it all depends on the different Asian countries. But from an overall representation standpoint, Asians are more represented in literature, but I would also say that's a blanket statement because there's Indians, there's Southeast Asians, there's Korean, right? So that I feel like that bucket doesn't really, that's not as nuanced as it should be. So I would say actually Latinos are the ones that suffer the most from this lack of representation, and therefore it's kind of where we've invested most of our energy.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
Well, I want to take a look again at some more of your videos, and this one teaches emotions, and I think that is really important for young children. So let's take a look at dealing with emotions and feelings.
Happy! If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Angry! If you're angry and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're angry and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're angry and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're angry and you know it, stomp your feet. Feliz! Si estás feliz, feliz, aplaude así. Si estás feliz, feliz, aplaude así. Si te sientes muy contento y disfrutas el momento. Si estás feliz, feliz, aplaude así. Enojado. Si te sientes enojado, marcha así. Si te sientes enojado, marcha así. Si te sientes enojado y bastante enfadado. Si te sientes enojado, marcha así.
Susie, I want to make sure that I give some more credit here. Do you write these and you illustrate them and create them?
So I'm the artist behind Canticles. I'm actually more of an illustrator than a writer. So it kind of translates into more of like a storyteller, filmmaker. I directed all the animated videos. I write the songs. But yeah, I love the world and I love writing the songs and I like directing them and putting jokes in there. That's always, every Canticles video has jokes.
Everyone. So before we are running out of time, so I do want to just ask you each just one or two other things. First of all, in terms of representation, I do know how important it is with giving due acknowledgement how important it is for children to see themselves represented. The flip side is that literature can show children worlds in which they are not represented. What do you think? I mean, should there be a balance of that? I mean, in other words, children need to see themselves, but then they need to see not themselves or worlds that are not their own.
Do you mind if I take this one?
Go right
I think
ahead.
it comes down to diverse storytellers.
Okay. Okay.
And I think more than ever, like the moral of the story matters. The moral of the story matters more, but the storyteller matters the most. We need diverse storytellers. Said diverse storytellers don't necessarily have to be writing about their culture. They can write about whatever they want, but we need their diverse perspective.
So you're meaning diverse authors?
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. Yeah. Diverse authors, diverse voices.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would love to add to that. So something that we've seen in our Diversity Through Literacy campaign is not just that the diverse stories are meaningful, but the idea of seeing an author that looks like me doing this thing, like writing a book and drawing the pictures. We have so many children who repeatedly ask like the author, what made you write the book? Or how did you draw the picture? But that experience alone has proven to be so meaningful for our children to see.
And if I could jump on that, how did you decide that your voice was worthy of putting into a book? How did you decide that you could write a book, right? And so just, when I go into schools and I talk, I always tell these children, honor the thoughts in your head and put them down on paper. Your voice is special.
How did you decide that you could write a book?
So honestly, why not? If not me, who?
Okay.
It was really like, if I don't do this, somebody else is going to do it badly, and then I'll be really upset. So for me, it was like, I actually had full confidence that for Canticos, I could write it in English and make it rhyme and make it sweet. I was a creative director. I knew how to build brand. I knew how to direct. I actually felt that like I had the right skill sets to bring this to life.
We only have a few seconds remaining,
Yeah.
so quickly, your long-term goals for LINC.
Oh, LINC is going to fix the literacy crisis. We're going to work ourselves out of business. That's what we're going to do.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. And for you?
Create media that makes kids feel inspired and seen.
I can't thank you enough for this really exciting and wonderful program. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed putting it together, just watching all the videos and reading all the material. So thank you so much, Laura Walsh, Susie Jaramillo, and thank you all so much for joining us today on this edition of EdCast. See you next time.